Good afternoon, everybody, and many thanks for joining us today on this broadcast. Obviously, I appreciate you joining us, especially as the England-Australia cricket game is on. So I'm delighted to tell you that Smith has just been run out. So that's great news to start the day. My name is Heath Roberts, and together with my colleague Ashely Barlow. Hello, Ashely.
Good afternoon.
We're going to give you a run through of the notable announcements that came out of Citrix Synergy. But just before we go into the content, I just need to do a couple of bits of housekeeping. An important one first. So if you could just go to your control panel, and in there you'll see a section that's called chat. And if you could let me know that you can hear this audio okay and you can see the screen okay, and just let me know, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, I end up speaking to myself, and while it has been known before, I'd rather avoid that. Secondly, also within that control panel, there is also a series there for questions. I'm conscious there is an enormous amount of content to get through today, so no doubt you will have questions. Please use that facility there to raise any questions that pop into your mind as we're running through the content. Okay, so let's just make sure we've got people who can hear us. So yes, that's great. Thank you for letting me know on that one. Okay, let's go into today's content. And really look to see what you can expect from this webinar. So first off, we'll be going through the Citrix Vision keynote. So here we're going to take you through and condense down what David Henschel, CEO of Citrix, has set out to be the vision of Citrix for the next 12 months. And also it's going to be interesting because we'll also go through the philosophy of the future of work. Then Ashely's going to do the tech dive. So he's going to look at the real core features that have been announced during the 4 days. And he's going to be going through a lot of content. You know, there's a lot of headline issues. When you consider there are some 115 presentations spread over 3.5 days, and we're trying to do this in hopefully 40 minutes, you can sort of see the rate of knots we'll be going through. Also, we'll cover off the Q&A session, and then at the end also there's a special invitation that I want to run past you all on the webinar today, and hopefully you can take us up on that. So, okay, the first keynote. So the keynote is usually, no offense to David Henschel, the CEO of Citrix, but it's usually where the CEO gets to play at being a rock star for 30 minutes. There's lasers, there's smoke machines, there's all that, you know, a thumping drum and bass soundtrack. So usually we skip over this, no offense, and we usually just jump into the tech. But in this instance, there's some really strong content that, as either a current Citrix user, or if you're thinking about implementing Citrix, is going to be really, really pertinent for you to understand. So they're talking about the future of work. Now, looking at last year, they introduced 3 portfolio elements. So we're looking at workspace, networking, and analytics. Now, this all came from a lot of work that they did in terms of the renaming of the profile. And for those of you that joined us last year, you'll remember that me and Ashely, we did the good, bad, and ugly on this, didn't we, Ashely? It was some we liked and some we didn't like. So they took all our favorites that we know, like Citrix Zen app, Zen desktop, and put them underneath this Citrix Workspace, the Workspace banner. And including there is one of our favorites, isn't it? Content collaboration.
Yeah, that obvious one.
That means share file that we still use. And the really one that trips off the tongue, endpoint management, which is obviously Ashely.
Yeah, well, quite rightly, it's mobile.
There we go. So they also then divided up their networking portfolio. So things like there was Citrix NetScaler,
Citrix ADC, or Citrix Gateway, or Citrix MAS, or whatever.
And including the other elements as Citrix SD-WAN. So they put all these into those 2 core portfolios, as well as a new one that was from 2018, which was the Citrix Analytics. Now, the keynote, it did cover off the networking piece and also the analytics piece, but there was a rather large announcement that came out around the workspace. So last year, they've fed in that they're introducing the Citrix Workspace app. So the Workspace app was really there to take over from what the functionality of Citrix Receiver, and also to help things such as single sign-on, and also integrate with things such as universal search throughout all of the apps. So this was really we sort of thought it was exciting. We thought, oh, this is interesting. But really, the reason I've gone through again the points of 2018 is because what's happened in the last 12 months. In November 2018, Citrix spent the not inconsiderable sum of $200 million on purchasing a company called Sapo. So Sapo basically looks to solve problems in the enterprise, and this messaging has really been carried through into Citrix's keynote and their vision for 2019. So what they're basically saying is, look, there are too many apps going on. Just from personal experience, I work in the marketing department here at Access, so I've got Asana that I'll run my project plans and also work with my teams. I've got Salesforce, I've got Pardot, I've got a whole host of different on-premise apps and also software as a service apps. So I can absolutely see where they're going in terms of everyone is subjected to 100 apps, but perhaps we don't use all those apps as much as of all the features as much as we can. So it might just be, using the example that Citrix provided of the photocopier. Yes, your expert users know all of those buttons, and what they do and how they can basically, do all the sorts of duplex printing, all that type of thing. Me, I just wander up and hit the big green button, and that's all I need to do. So that's what the best basic saying about applications is that, are we using them to the full potential, and actually do we need to use them to that potential? And also there's lots of switching. We've got the guys in here only know too well. I've got browsers open left, right, and center. Ashely, why are you smiling?
Killing all of our hardware, all of our resources. It's because it's got a Chrome tab open that's associated to H Roberts. So
Ashely, thank you. Right, so as Ashely said, to just verify, we're switching constantly between apps, and actually, is this really efficient? Is this really helping me to do my job? So what Citrix and the purchase of Sapo have really come together and help implement is they're looking to help organize our apps, to help guide workflows, and in other areas to help automate workflows and processes. So at Synergy, it was announced that they're introducing Citrix Workspace with intelligent experience. So this is where we can go and sort of explain what all this means. So whereas before, Citrix was very much about the underlying layers. It was very much around, our Zen apps, our Zen desktops, our Netscalers, and there wasn't that much in the way of user interaction, with the notable exceptions of things like Citrix Receiver, Storefront. So in essence, what the intelligent experience is doing is building on Workspace, and in essence is having a micro app builder. So what they're doing here is, rather than having to open Salesforce, rather than having to open all your different apps for things like raising expenses, for approving holidays, they're building micro apps through workflows that are all coming through a single pane of glass, so this Citrix Workspace. And from here, you can be notified of relevant information, of relevant reports, but also then, I say, develop and communicate with other members within your organization. So in essence, they're looking to distill all of the applications that we use into personalized units of work. So whatever you can do within the app, you can do within Citrix Workspace. And this is important because ultimately what we're trying to do here is implement efficiencies. We're also looking to implement innovation. So if we can do things quicker, if we can do things simpler, then that's obviously going to be a benefit to not just our users, but also to the organization. So as you can see on the screen at the moment, that's what Citrix Workspace is at the moment looking like. I say at the moment looking like. The release date we've got on this, Ashely, is end of the year, I think is.
Yeah, I think typically from Synergy, anything that's really announced, they try and make come true within that calendar year. So hopefully before the end of the year.
And I really feel this slide again helps visualize what they're going to deliver with Citrix Workspace. So it's taken all our enterprise applications and it's feeding them through into Citrix Workspace and then being able to communicate out again to our relevant teams using either Microsoft Teams, email, Slack, G Suite, whatever the best form of communication is. So in essence, then, this is the experience that I can really relate to, and I think it's a good way of explaining what they're trying to achieve is the consumerization of the experience. So whereas, if you're looking to go and check in on a plane, you wouldn't have to go and log into your checking in system, log into your luggage system, go into your baggage tracking apps. You've just got one nice clear GUI that you can literally click the relevant information and the rest happens behind the scenes. And that's really what they're looking to drive through with this acquisition of Sapo. And it got me thinking that, is this relevant for all? And because yes, it's going to be working at the enterprise level, for people that have got all these different SaaS apps. But there was one announcement that really got me excited and thinking this is going to be really, really relevant for everybody that's going to be a Citrix user. Because as well as all this great stuff about the enterprise applications, they also announced this, which is the Citrix Workspace Micro App Builder. So bear in mind, this is a way that you can create your own micro apps and you can still deliver them to a desktop or to a mobile device. There's no coding involved, it's all drag and drop and it's completely customizable. So we work with a number of housing associations and this just got me thinking of the different sort of use cases that we can implement here. It's like, the guys out in the field doing their snagging lists of the repairs and the warranty side of things. It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to build a little app that is specifically for you that you can then use to make it efficient for the guys out in the field to record and send back the issues that they find on site. So this might be able to save you costs on other different bits of licensing. But I think also the great thing that Citrix has always had is you're working within that secure digital perimeter. So, the headlines that have been out this week that, I think it's fair to say everyone thought, oh, GDPR's been and gone, that wasn't going to be a thing. And then bosh.
I think it was about £187 million worth of things.
Well, and then the other one from Marriott, which was 90 million. So the importance of having that secure digital perimeter, you're building with confidence. So why do I think this is significant? Well, I think Citrix, for me, have now really got a clear roadmap of how they're progressing their organization. They've got their 3 building blocks. So there's some really interesting stuff that's coming out around analytics. There's some really strong work that they're doing around networking with their SD-WAN product. And also they're looking to sort of redefine that end user compute experience. End user computing isn't just related to how do you launch your apps and how do you work. What they're implementing is how can we drive through efficiencies? How can we make it simpler and easier for your users to do their job? And that's exciting because I think that helps reposition IT, not that it doesn't need repositioning, but rather than it being viewed as a cost center and, oh, how much you want this time, it can actually be used as where it really should be for enlightened organizations, which is driving in organizational efficiency, but then looking at innovative ways to do the things you're already doing. And I think by doing that and by working closely with other departments, you reduce the risk of that shadow IT, and also it stops the IT just being seen as that cost center. So for me, yeah, keynotes, they're always great. You always get a little bouncy CEO jumping around. You always get the whooping and hollering. I think that's a very American thing. Certainly you wouldn't get that in rural Derbyshire. You might get a polite clap, but that'll be your lot. So for me, it's really exciting to see where Citrix are going to be developing and where they're going to be taking these tools.
It was really cool to see some of the demos that they were doing on stage during the keynote, particularly around the Sapo integration and how these apps sort of like really work. I know one of the common sort of use cases for it that Citrix seems to be talking about at the moment is the whole paid time off and accepting and allowing a member of staff to go on leave and authorizing it, and the integration that does with Workday, the integration that it does with SAP Concur. It's really cool. And then you start thinking, right, well, how does that become relevant to me? And you start going, right, well, some of these apps that are listed aren't necessarily apps that I use at the moment, and that's where that micro app builder
absolutely
bridges that gap. And the fact that you're going to be given the ability in your IT department to be enabled to make it work for their own SaaS applications that they're subscribing to, there's no reason that this can't really work for anyone, and it is really powerful. So hopefully we can you know, provide some demos for our customers on that at a later date as well.
Definitely. So that was my piece on the Citrix vision strategy, and again, it was great to see. So I'm conscious now. I'm going to hand over the the difficult job is Ashely that's coming up. So again, when you consider he's had to sift through a lot of content. It is going to be a case of strap yourself in. There's a lot of highlights to try and fit into the time available. No. So Ashely, I've laid the gauntlet down. Are you ready to pick it up?
Just about. I'm, you know, very conscious of time. I don't want to consume everyone's afternoon, but just to reiterate what Heath was saying, really, there's 115 workshops, presentations, 3-day period.
Yeah.
We're condensing it down into half an hour. So, you know, it's going to be, I'm going to rattle through.
Again, just to reiterate, you know, you'll find some bits in here that will be less relevant and more relevant. You know, just use this as a session to identify, I want to go and find out more about that.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll come in. We can, you know, we're really keen to help you guys. You know, that's what we're really good at is just helping you get the most out of your Citrix investment.
Yeah, and I think I'd save it for a later slide, but the only thing that I'm really asking from the attendees today is really note down stuff that is really, you know, that is of interest. I'm going to go through some features. I'm going to spend a minute on some of them, a couple of minutes on others and things like that. If there's something that you want to know more about, make a little note of it, get in touch with us, put a chat session or a question into the control panel, and we'll come and do a one-to-one, or we'll make it more relevant to you and spend some more time with it. But there's a lot to go over, so I'm going to jump right in, I think, and crack on.
I'm sorry, I need an update. It's 223 all out.
Oh, so brilliant. I reckon surely we win that. Surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay, so boring bits first. Whilst we're obviously very excited to share some of this content with you from Synergy, it's always worth reminding everyone that most of this content reflects features that are in the current code, and some is going to be referencing upcoming features which are not set in stone. So some of these offerings may not make it into production. I don't see why they wouldn't, but as a statement and a bit of a disclaimer, we've got to start with.
It's your arse covering slide, isn't it, Ashely?
Yeah, very much so. This is my terms and conditions on the radio advert. So no, we've got to say it. That's the boring bit out of the way. So if there's anything that we talk about saying it doesn't make it into the future releases, apologies, but I don't see why it wouldn't, to be honest. So hopefully we're in a safe position to talk about them. Now, obviously Heath's section at the start was really about the future of work and what sort of putting branding as the future of work and what Citrix roadmap looks like at the moment. And I think it's important just to spend a couple of minutes on where this really came from and what the roots of Citrix really were, and whether it's actually going to drive the conversations any differently or not, or whether it's going to complement them. And I think we should start with what we use Citrix for today. So most organizations are utilizing a form of Citrix technologies, be it XenApp, XenDesktop, NetScaler, ShareFile, XenMobile, all the old names that I'm not
going to say, I'm going to pick you up then.
Yeah. I need to put a pound in the swear jar for using the old names, but they utilize and subscribe to one of those products for choice, experience, and security. Now, I think Heath touched upon a couple of these bits anyhow, but in choice, you know, in a past life, the choice used to be around the user device and the location, and now it's very much so about the applications and where they're going to be located, whether it be on-prem, in a service provider, in a public cloud or whatnot. The experience is really about, you know, that messaging, the experience hasn't changed at all. It's about creating the thinnest and most optimized user experience possible for your end users, and that HDX protocol, that ICA protocol, is still the richest and thinnest end user computing protocol out there today, and you know, most Citrix users out there are having the best experience that they possibly can from their end user computing strategy. And the security, sort of said in the same breath, really, the security side of it, we're still centralizing workloads, we're still preventing any content being native to the device, and we're still meeting many compliance needs through the FlexCast architecture that virtual apps and desktops, well done, thank you very much, is built upon. So Citrix virtual apps and desktops, it's always followed this 5-layer model. Now, this isn't really going to change too much in the future. It's still going to drive a lot of conversations, but ultimately these 5 layers are made up of the user layer. So who are the users? What are their endpoints? What experience do they require? The access layer, and how will those users gain access to their resources? The resource layer of what resources do the users get? So this is, you know, pretty much what Heath was covering off with the the SaaS applications, your on-prem applications, do they need a desktop? Are they going to be a shared desktop? The control layer about how we manage, monitor and maintain the solution, and the hardware layer about what platforms will be used to run the environment. And the power of this sort of 5-layer model is the flexibility of it. Now, conceptually, what we've got on screen is the user layer can be split into multiple approaches for accessing the environment. Maybe they're on different endpoints, maybe they're in different locations. The methods to access the environment can be specific for users or shared across many users. The users can get access to many different resources. Again, shared across the users, they can be allowed or denied through different access approaches. This is really where we want to get quite contextual with it and start saying to people, well, if you're in the corporate environment, then yes, you've got access to everything, but maybe if you're in a public hotspot, you don't want to be giving any the users access to any confidential data, so you want to limit what applications they've got access to. We can always manage the entire solution with a single control layer, and different portions can be hosted from a single hardware platform or multiple platforms, or hybrid cloud, which is sort of showing itself to be more and more king of the environment these days. And we've spent a lot of time discussing and designing solutions based on these 5 layers, and I don't believe that's going to change. It sounds very different from what Heath was saying at the start, talking about it in its nuts and bolts format, but I believe we're going to continue to discuss these 5 layers, but I think it's going to be complemented with a few more bits that are starting to creep in from the future of work presentation. I mean, it's already started. For those of you that I've been meeting with recently that are on this webinar today, questions that we're asking are things like, what's your SaaS and cloud approach? Does anyone have a cloud first policy? Or if they do, what's driving it? Is it the cost? Is it the simplicity? Do you have bring your own devices? Are you already using public cloud to manage workloads? And what use cases are you looking to have from a public cloud? Is it going to be cost savings? Is it going to be for DR and business continuity? And are you embracing the multi-cloud approach? So we're already starting to see that change in dynamic, that shift in conversations to meet that future of work that Citrix is being quite visionary about at the moment. So in the past, this is sort of, I guess the next few slides really are going to be my adoption and take on the future of work messaging put into a realistic use case, I guess, if you will, and hopefully it sort of rings some bells and looks familiar to some of you guys. So in the past, IT was historically easier. Apps were all Windows based. The devices were primarily Windows, with some exceptions for maybe mobile devices or bring your own policies. And applications and data resided in company data centers. So you created a well-defined perimeter that could be managed and secured. Now today the world is much, much more complex. Work is distributed. You've got workers, you've got partners, you've got contractors scattered around the globe. Your applications and content may be in the cloud, some may be in the cloud, some might not be, some might be planned to move into the cloud. Heath's already mentioned vendors such as Salesforce, Box, Workday, Concur. Employees are accessing them from multiple endpoints as well: desktops, laptops, tablets, smartphones. You can, I know it's not really his favorite subject, but even the Internet of Things there's
Don't stop.
we can integrate things like Amazon Echoes and Alexa and Google Homes into some of this work-life balance that Citrix can deliver now. And IT workloads are moving beyond company-run data centers to regional branches and public and private clouds such as AWS, Azure, and Google. And we know that complexity will increase and accelerate in ways that we can't really predict yet. So in the context of the Citrix vision, I think Citrix are really recognizing that work is no longer a place, and the world has moved beyond the PC. It's moved beyond the data center. And ultimately, what I took away from Heath's slides earlier is that in the future, the only device that will matter is you, the end user. It doesn't matter how you as the end user are working, it's you that we've got to look after. And work will occur everywhere that user is. I've been hitting lots of major cities this week, been in Edinburgh, been in London, and my work has been based from a mobile device predominantly. If I've been in a meeting, I've had my laptop out to do a presentation, but straight away that's just 2 devices. That was the first couple of hours of my day, and it's easier to think about me as a user rather than it is me as a user of devices. So we need to be able to cater for any device that user is going to be utilizing. So to improve the employee engagement and productivity, the user really needs a digital workspace that is context aware, that's reliable, intelligent enough to offer up the right access, the right insight, and the right performance to get the job done. So it all sounds relatively complex, but is it really? I'm not too sure. You know, complexity is really hard to tame, but it's also where Citrix can help. So really helping organizations deal with the complexity and pull it all together in a way that creates this new software-defined perimeter also enables easy access for people wherever they are around the world and whatever the device they come in on, to give them the contextual access to the applications, information, and resources that they need. So whether it's a cloud technology coming from whichever cloud you're subscribed to, or whether it's a traditional on-prem technology or a mobile technology, all they need to do to access it in a simple contextual way, and that is precisely what Citrix is delivering. So for the end user, for the people at work, the most important thing is delivering that unified experience and enabling them to access their workspaces. It needs to be familiar, it needs to be fluid, and from the moment that they get into their workspace, wherever that may be, they need to feel like they have access to everything that they need. So on one side, IT needs to manage all of those devices and control the policies for access, and you need to manage all of the apps and need to modernize them. We know that app modernization is one of the biggest hurdles that IT organizations face at the moment. And you also need to have full visibility, and that is the way to turn your company into sort of this workspace intelligent organization that Citrix is talking about now. So this is a little bit of what it looks like. Again, I think Heath had some screen grabs in his slide deck as well. This is the intelligent workspace, looking at it from an apps, desktops, and files point of view. The consistent user experience, it looks pretty similar. It's got the same theme across a desktop there and a mobile device. Federated authentication, so one point of sign-on, and I'm still getting into my subscribed SaaS applications as well. And it all comes from Citrix's workspace, the secure digital perimeter. So I think Citrix started coining this secure digital perimeter phrase probably at last year's event, I think is when we first started to hear it. But it's exactly as Heath was describing earlier, the whole workspace, the analytics, the networking, the three pillars, subscribing to all of those within Citrix creates you this big picture of the Citrix workspace, which again, we can go into on a one-to-one basis in a more detailed review, should we need to.
And I think, when Ashely's making the comment, it's about the user. Why is that important? And it's like, I was fortunate enough last year to hear a presentation by Nikki King, and Nikki is the former MD and current honorary chairman of Isuzu Trucks, and she was able to utilize a whole different part of the workforce to implement customer service teams. So by having technology that is focused around the needs of the user, you can actually find different talent pools that you can tap in to create competitive advantage for your organization. So I think it's often easy to forget the impact that this type of technology can bring, not just in making more efficiencies or driving through innovation, but also untapping new workers, new types of talent that you can bring into and differentiate and make your organization better.
Absolutely, and I think to sort of like put it frankly, there's been a big culture shift in the last few years of IT as well, and in the workplace, and there is a bigger focus on the user and enabling them to have that work-life balance and a healthy work-life balance. And Citrix has just proven themselves time and time again to be an enabler in that market as well.
Completely.
Okay, so let me just jump back onto the slide deck. So Heath's already covered off the name changes, so I don't need to dwell on those really. One of the nice additions to this is that the versioning has also changed for what was Sun App and Zen Desktop, now Virtual Apps and Desktops. We now refer to a year and a month to represent the version of the product. So that's
American style there, that's the only problem.
It is a little bit. I mean, those familiar with, to administering Windows 10 probably recognize that format anyhow. It's, like you say, a very Americanized format now. And it's just simply easier to track when a release was indeed released, really. You know, when a customer turns around to me and says, oh, we're still on Zen App 7.12 or Virtual Apps 7.12, I have to think back to when that was released, and it was probably, you know, 3.5, 4 years ago now. And you know, I have to pause and think, yeah, that feels like a really long time ago. And it's not necessarily too obvious to the user either how old that version really is. However, if you're staring a release in the face that said 1808, 1906, you know, you start going, oh, well, it's June 2018. Yeah, actually, it's already been a year since I implemented that release, and maybe I do need to start maintaining it a little bit more, patching it a little bit more. So they've gone down that format, but the only annoying thing is it very quickly jumped from 7.17, 7.18, 1808, 1811, and it just changed very quickly one day, and it was a bit sort of like
keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. And people are going, where's 7.19? What happened to 7.20? Well, yeah, and you know, in some cases, actually looking in some of the registry keys and some of the code base for it, it actually refers to it as 7.19 and 7.20 as well. So there's still a few people in that engineering team that are just like, no, not doing it. We're having 7.20 instead. So no, that was new. The Citrix release strategy. So this hasn't really changed as such. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to be highlighting features and capabilities across all three of the release cycles. So if you're new to Citrix or more importantly, new to the release strategy, this is the easiest way to think about it. So using virtual apps as a desktop, using virtual apps as an example, we use the same code base of virtual apps in the cloud as you would do on an on-premise deployment. So what this allows us to do is have new updates and new features released to Citrix Cloud. They do it every sort of 2 to 4 weeks. And then every quarter, those changes, those features get pushed out to the current release. And then every 2 to 3 years, those current release changes get pushed out to the long-term service release. So we call those the three strategies: LTSR, long-term service release, CR, current release, and CC, or Citrix Cloud, for anyone that's subscribed to a cloud service. So what I'm going to do, try and multitask, which is never a good thing, is I'm going to launch. Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to launch a poll to say, which release strategy are you currently implementing? And if you guys just get a second or two to go through and let us know whether you're on cloud, current release, or long-term service release, and we'll collect those responses towards the end. Okay, so whilst you guys are doing that, I will carry on. Oh, I see. Oh, do I need to close the poll as well? Look how naive I am with these webinar toolkits. Right, I will give it a few more seconds on that poll then. I need a countdown clock, don't I?
I'm not doing music. I'm not doing music.
That's fine. No, I'm not doing it either. It's fine. Right, I'm going to close that poll. There we go. Thank you very much for those that responded. And hopefully you guys got the screen back. You have. Excellent. Okay, so 7.15 is the current LTSR, which in reality is a couple of years old now. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth. But the good news is that Q4 this year, there's going to be another LTSR announced. It's pretty much going to be what I think we'll call the 1909 or 1910 code base. That'll be the next LTSR support for 5 years or 10 years in extended support. And we've been waiting for it. We've been having interesting conversations with customers for the last year, probably saying there's some really cool new features in the current releases, but you guys are on LTSR because that meets the corporate strategy better. And it's just a bit like, well, we can't do a lot for you. So the fact that the new LTSR is coming out now, there's no reason that these people that are on LTSR, which looking at the poll suggests a lot of you may well be, that you're going to get an upgrade coming your way that is going to look a lot slicker, a lot newer, have a lot more features that you can make use of. So anyone that is currently on the LTSR, get in touch with us after this webinar and have a chat with your account managers, or ask for myself or Heath directly, and we'll have a chat with you about how we can migrate you or upgrade you to this new release. And then this is the last slide before I'm going to go into the sort of like the feature roundup, I suppose, if you will, because I think this is a good talking point at the minute. And it's not news. Citrix are working very closely with Microsoft on their upcoming Windows Virtual Desktop launch later this year. Currently, it's in public preview, and it's pretty cool. It's most easily summarized as multi-user Windows 10. So Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service can host, manage, deliver, and optimize the performance of a traditional on-premise workload that we're all familiar with today. And as soon as WVD is generally available later this year, Virtual Apps and Desktop Service will also be able to host, manage, deliver, and optimize the performance of Windows Virtual Desktop workloads hosted in Azure based on customer entitlement. So the key differentiator is Citrix's ability to centrally manage WVD Azure hosted workloads and on-prem workloads side by side. So giving you this sort of, again, this hybrid is king approach to administrators. And it's worth noting that the ability to integrate Windows Virtual Desktop's entitlements is only available with the Virtual Apps and Desktop Service offering, i.e. Citrix Cloud. And it is going to be a key driving factor for customers on the fence about adopting the cloud service or the on-premises LTSR and CR releases as well. I forgot to miss my transition. Windows 10 multi-session, and you also get, if you've stuck on Windows 7, subscribe to Windows Virtual Desktop, you get a little bit longer support for Windows 7 as well, which is pretty cool. But I say that it's old, you should move off it. But anyhow, excuse me. Now then, sort of approaching the myth-busting side of Windows Virtual Desktop is that Microsoft acquired a company called FSLogix that hopefully many of you are familiar with back in November 2018. And the FSLogix team very quickly became a large part of the Windows Virtual Desktop team. FSLogix are very much the masters of program, Office 365 optimization, application masking, Java containers. And for people who have worked with us at Access Systems for a long time, hopefully know that we've championed FSLogix for quite a while. And when they were bought by Microsoft late last year, they ultimately disappeared for 5 or 6 months.
You've just put that slide up now because you're featuring on FSLogix website, aren't you?
Is that my name? Sorry. Goodness me, how did that slip in there? So yeah, the people didn't disappear. We still have our contacts and whatnot. We still speak to them, but the product offering kind of just nobody knew whether they needed to buy it anymore. Nobody knew how to sort of resubscribe to it and keep themselves in maintenance, and it disappeared for a few months. And that wasn't just to the end user customers, that was to us as partners as well. And then very recently Microsoft reared their head, and I strongly believe that the FSLogix team have had a big foothold in making this a possibility, but Microsoft have come back and said, actually, FSLogix as a program isn't necessarily changing. It's going to have the Microsoft badge on it and whatnot, but the reality is it's going to be free to customers who are subscribing to Microsoft 365 platforms, Windows 10 Enterprise and Education, E3, E5, A3 and A5. And for the real cool one for the majority of you is anyone with an RDS cam. So that's, and any Zen app user now has entitlements to use this suite of FSLogix products, which really
it's like when we sort of implemented FSLogix first off, wasn't it? The amount of problems that it solved, it was incredible, wasn't it? Just the user experience issues, it was incredible. Yeah,
the vendor, FSLogix, Kevin Goodman was the sort of founder and CEO, CTO of the firm, and he fixed problems with profiles, and then Office 365 came along, and the whole sort of like 365 and Citrix performance being a bit rubbish, FSLogix fixed it, and everyone tried to copy them. Vanity, AppSense, Liquidware. All right, maybe it shouldn't be so tongue-in-cheek in saying it, but ultimately FSLogix were there first, and others were playing catch-up to them. Everyone had a little bit of a Me Too version of FSLogix. Microsoft have acquired them, great. They're looking after them even better. They've formed the Windows Virtual Desktops team, so it's really cool, and the products are available to people at largely no cost, because you can't run Citrix products without having an RDS cal or a VDA cal. So all of a sudden our strategy is changing a little bit. We're kind of forgetting a little bit about roaming profiles, about Citrix UPM, and we're just going, let's just whack FSLogix in there, particularly if you subscribe to 365 and that's where your mailboxes are. So
what did you say? You mentioned, we had a conversation last week about this very subject. You mentioned that this is it, use profile done.
Yes, and until that underlying operating system changes dramatically, in my opinion, there's no reason to consider any other approach to your profile management than containerization, and that's what FSLogix is. It's creating these mount points, these VHDX files that store your profile. It's fast. There's no waiting for your profile to load at logon. It's just attached as a symbolic link. It's incredible. It's fast, and until that operating system changes, for me, there's no point in considering another approach to profile management. So we're going to review finally. It's only taken us what, 35 minutes, 40 minutes to get to this point where I'm going to start talking about some of the new announcements that actually came out of Synergy. So we've done the strategy bits, and I think it makes perfect sense to sort of review the announcements in the order of choice, experience, and security, just for continuity's sake, really. And we've already reiterated 115 presentations condensed down into the next few moments.
Go.
Let's get, yeah, exactly. Just nail that Red Bull and let's go. Right. Okay. So choice. When people think of Citrix, the word any often comes to mind, and that's because IT should have choice over their infrastructure and cloud providers. They should also have choices in management and monitoring tools that align to their administrative needs. So not necessarily. Oh, what's this one? I've got my notes. Sorry, I've got my notes on the wrong one. So Citrix Workspace, hybrid cloud. So this is very much saying that the choice is yours for a multi-cloud strategy. So Citrix has got support for AWS, GCP, Azure, VMware on AWS, Oracle Cloud, and your traditional on-premise stuff. Nutanix AHV, Acropolis Hypervisor, VMware vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, Citrix Hypervisor. We can host this platform wherever we need to. It's brilliant. Lots of choice.
I mean, just from that side, the fact they've gone, VMware, and they've now got Google Cloud Platform on board as well. It's it is that complete choice.
Very much so. I can't think of anything that's missing from there. It's brilliant. So lots of choice from a cloud point of view. So sort of continuing on the theme of hybrid clouds, one of the key features that has been recently released is autoscale. So what Citrix say officially, so this is a line from Citrix, is autoscale takes resource optimization and cost savings to a new level by allowing customers to, big word here, judiciously use their hybrid cloud investments, and particularly on the public clouds, in a way that offers cost savings without impacting user experience.
What does that mean then?
What Ashely says. For those of you that are an on-prem Citrix customer, this will look very familiar to you because it is ultimately power management. So when we've previously said, right, you want to have 100 desktops available between 9 and 5, but you only want to have 20 available between 5 and 9, the opposite of that. That's what it is. But this is the difference here is that it's doing it in your public cloud environment. So ultimately, lots of organizations with workloads in the clouds want to make use of the cost saving in the cloud. You subscribe to that model of powering stuff down at an off-peak hour that allows you to save it, save the cache associated to it. It does just that. It's a big tick in the box, long time coming, but we can do it now.
That's easier than the definition previously provided.
The master of debunking stuff. What's actually really cool about autoscale is pretty cool in itself, but the fact that they've also integrated it into Director means, in theory, and I say theory because I've not really seen it in practice, is that you could create a lovely report to show your finance people exactly how much you are saving in your off-peak times. In fact, I'll rephrase that. It's not actually, it's a really good debate to have about cost savings in the cloud. So instead, I'm going to say that you can create a lovely report to show your finance people how much money you're not spending.
Oh, like it.
In your off-peak times, because whether there's money to be saved in a cloud model or not is it's a great debate to be having with customers. So, and it's Citrix have also made other metrics like capacity utilization and power logs available through Director as well. Citrix introduced local host cache for virtual apps and desktops Q4 last year to improve reliability in scenarios of network disruption to the cloud and other events which disrupt that traffic flow from the cloud connectors to the virtual apps and desktop service. With local host cache, the connectors essentially behave like a secondary broker, which would take over the brokering transactions in the event of that network outage. So that allows you to preserve your existing end user sessions, and VDAs will register with the elected secondary broker, which keeps business running as usual. So as soon as network connectivity is restored, broker responsibilities are passed back to the virtual apps and desktop service, again with no user impact. Google Cloud Platform, we've sort of touched upon already as well. It's a strategic partner for Citrix, and last year they brought out a script for deploying virtual apps and desktops, resource locations on GCP, added in the power management capabilities to persistent virtual desktop agents, and that functionality will be available only in the virtual apps and desktop service initially, but will make its way to the on-prem product in a later release as well. And also later this year, they're going to finally support MCS in Google Cloud Platform as well. So license usage in Citrix Cloud has always been, not tedious, always been fun, let's say, I suppose, to make use of it, and it's now being extended from just being in the context of Citrix Cloud customers to on-prem implementations. And from a Citrix Cloud perspective, traditionally they'd allowed the virtual apps and desktop service customers to follow their license consumption against the entitlement. And now what Citrix is saying is that they're going to take that functionality one step further with introducing the ability to free up a no longer used license from users who no longer use the service 30 days after their login. So user leaves, 30 days later, grab your license back, no problem. And from a historical perspective, you can get a trend analysis chart, which shows you what has happened in terms of license assignments or license releases over a period of months as well. And that same trend analysis also works for active use, and certainly helps administrators identify patterns in terms of seasonability and any other patterns that can be inferred from the data. Citrix continue to expand on their investments into the Linux VDA. I'm not really going to touch upon all of these, but the Linux VDAs continue to be supported on. Cool stuff that wasn't really available before is MCS. Federated authentication is now built into the Linux VDA, which is pretty cool. Smart card support as well. So, particularly the healthcare environment, being able to log on through a smart card is fantastic. Linux VDA is still getting optimized quite a lot, which is good. And when it comes to flexibility and choice, they, Citrix is still spending a lot of time with Zen Server, now known as Citrix Hypervisor. I think that was the one that got us the most, wasn't it, last year? There's 2 Zen Server releases still. There's the LTSR and the current release. So again, the continuity within Citrix is quite high. Zen Server 7.1 will contain all of the fixes released since the last cumulative update. Also brings along a few new features like support for Server 2019, the Citrix Cloud licensing that we just spoke about, and the latest cumulative update will be certified for common criteria, which can be quite an important security certification for some Zen Server customers. And then they've also released Citrix Hypervisor, new name, 8.0, which is the first release that adapts the new name in, but more importantly, also includes major changes to the underlying operating system, which also means that they've got to recertify against a lot of hardware as well. So the hardware compatibility list has changed quite a bit for 8.0. Some of the key new features we can do, in fact, the one that I really like, the 2 terabyte things, long time coming, I guess, but actually being able to snapshot for disk and memory vGPU enabled virtual machines. So when a VM is resumed from that snapshot, the vGPU state is also restored as well. Similar to what Heath was saying with the micro app builder, really, it's a bit of repetition there. Virtual Apps and Desktops team is focused on providing an API first approach. So they are investing heavily on the API side, introducing new API routes to our customers, also allowing new technologies to be consumed. It's very much a take on orchestration API, and it's ultimately saying what our engineers use internally to build these products, we're now going to make available to you as end users as well, which is, it's a great shout. I'm not too sure, for the DevOps department's going to love that, really going to love that. And it's worth noting that they are still going to be very invested in PowerShell. These RESTful APIs are one of the newer technologies out there, but PowerShell still continues to be sort of the supported and driving force behind virtual apps and desktops. So that's choice covered off. Experience, what's new in user experience? So I think it's worth kicking this one off with a look at how the Citrix VDA, the virtual desktop agent, has evolved over time when it comes to usage. So as workloads grow more complex, it's then kind of just a given that you guys as customers are expected to invest on more hardware or move to the cloud to meet those demands of resources, ultimately CPU and RAM and disk and whatnot. And I do believe that Citrix are conscious of the effect that the VDA load has on the tangible costs of the cloud, and they are working to improve both CPU and bandwidth consumption. VDA CPU usage is a pretty interesting metric, and something that you can see from the graph on screen is that they've made great strides in driving it down over time. So for on-prem customers, you'll be able to pack more users into your data centers, and for cloud customers or hybrid cloud customers, every bit of CPU use that we can drive down from the stack means a reduced cost in the cloud world. So there is arguably the tangible cost savings associated with these improvements as well. On the flip side, and somewhat ironically, also evolving the HDX and ICA stack to use more bandwidth when it is available. So with the new HDX adaptive HDX adaptive throughput functionality, we can actually consume 4 times more bandwidth when it's available to ensure that we're delivering the absolute best user experience when the user has a very fast connection. Especially important for multimedia playback or interactive sessions, and as you would expect, this will scale back automatically just to be a good citizen on the network when that network becomes a more degraded version of itself. So in theory as well, this increase in bandwidth will probably result in a decrease in server resources consumed to render the session.
Probably not getting the full experience of that video currently playing through a GoToWebinar session. So
oh yeah, on my screen it looks great. The
yeah.
donuts on top of the Red Bull tower is brilliant. Oh no, is that the Citrix offices?
That was in Atlanta, I think.
Is that Atlanta?
Yeah.
Really cool. They're not getting it in the PDF format at the end either, will they? What a shame. Okay, so talking about interactive workloads, I wanted to give some exciting news for customers out there who do have Office 365 or are certainly considering the move to Office 365. Because last year Citrix sort of announced their optimization for web-based Microsoft Teams via browser content redirection. And now Citrix are at a point of being very close to providing the same type of optimization for the native Microsoft Teams desktop client, which is ultimately a continuation of the Skype for Business real-time optimization pack, which, according to Citrix as of today, 700,000 daily active users. So I was at a Microsoft pre-sales masterclass recently, and their messaging throughout it all was very much, no matter what the question is, Microsoft Teams is the answer. And for me, and I think for Access Systems really, not really seeing as many Teams deployments as Microsoft probably think there is out there. So again, I've done another poll, which gives me a chance to grab a quick drink, but I am curious to know how many of you guys on the webinar have implemented Teams, are implementing Teams, or not bothering with anything like that. If you guys can just sort of voice your opinions on that poll, we're really curious to sort of like help out with anything that you might be doing with it, and particularly if you're a Citrix outfit as well, and we can look to utilize some of these optimization packs. Okay, just give you a few more seconds on that one. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that, guys. Again, I'll collect those. Well, I say I'll collect those results. I'm hoping you've got somebody lined up, Heath, to do something with those polls afterwards.
Yeah, we'll sort of.
Good man. Okay, cool. Right, on from Teams then. So we also see a lot of organizations broadening their device footprint when it comes to lower cost, easily manageable devices. A long way of saying a Google Chromebook, in my opinion. So Chromebooks continue to take off in popularity, and Citrix do support the HDX real-time optimizations on that platform as well. So end users can interact with applications like Skype for Business and Teams and still have that great experience regardless of their endpoint. Big hitter in education, which is pretty cool. Virtual display layout. So this is a really interesting one. It's a great shout from Citrix. So in the latest release of the Workspace app, formerly known as Receiver, Citrix kind of cottoned onto people are going for less monitors now, aren't they? They're going for wider screens and bigger ultra-wide displays like the ones on the screen that you've got there. And they said, right, okay, well, we want to still partition that screen up a little bit. So they've created the virtual display layout, which sort of, I guess financial traders will be used to it and stuff like that, where they've got 4 or more monitors configured for different use cases. But if you've got the one monitor, rather than managing and maintaining half a dozen physical monitors, have the one large monitor, and the virtual display layout functionality will allow you to split that screen in up to, I think it's 8 as a maximum. I'm just looking on screen just to make sure that that's sort of coming through. Hopefully you can see that you're allowed to select your screen layout as you see fit, and it's up to 8 logical monitors on that session. So that's really cool. Quite like that one. So they were some of the bigger user experience enhancements, but hopefully as you can see on screen, Citrix were not limited to those, as the HDX teams are constantly putting out new user experience enhancements that optimize Citrix sessions. So touching upon a few of those quite quickly, bypass HDX Cloud Connector is designed to improve Cloud Connector scalability by tripling the amount of users per connector from 1,000 to 3,000. Which is really cool. So for companies running workloads in public clouds, it can help you save money by reducing the amount of required cloud connectors and reducing the amount of public cloud consumption because of it. DPI matching. Citrix can leverage the DPI aware capabilities of the Workspace app to detect resolution and DPI scales set for a given display, and request a Citrix session to match those parameters exactly. So like a 4K display on the endpoint with a DPI scale of 150% would result in the ICA to be just that on the VDA, which again, I know a few of you have had trouble with, lots of help desk tickets around that. And users will now be, well, assuming that your Citrix admins allow it, be able to copy and paste files between local endpoints and virtual sessions. Bit of a security hole, I guess. But
so I'm not too keen on that one, but there we go.
It's a feature. It makes it makes the announcements, and then there's the build to lossless image quality and progressive display. So that gives end users the experience when there is a lot of motion going on, throwing away some bits while the screen is updating, and then filling the missing pixels very quickly once the motion slows down. So I flashed up a similar slide to this earlier. The reason I'm bringing it up is that unified experience has only ever really rung true of Citrix Cloud customers. So you can see the theme is the same across all devices. And now, finally, we're able to say that with the new site aggregation functionality, brings the benefits of the Workspace theme, I guess, available to on-prem customers. So site aggregation is a sort of an architecture designed for migrating to Citrix Cloud to a certain means, but enabling site aggregation also allows you to keep subscribe to Citrix Cloud licensing, but maybe keep the majority of your infrastructure on-prem still, and that will also give you access to the Workspace Cloud theme that you've sort of seen throughout this presentation. Director is great, and it's getting a bit long in the teeth saying every release Director gets better and better, but it genuinely does. I think over the last year there's been major enhancements to login duration, So anything that happens between a user clicking on an application or a desktop icon and having that interactive session launch and be ready to use, everything is documented in Director. There's new metrics allowing administrators to drill down into the entire application or desktop launch sequence, and seeing lots of details about each phase of that event. So I think there's been about a dozen new metrics around client and server session startup, executable launch, profile loads, script-based execution times. So admins can very quickly get an idea of what might be causing a slow login, which is still to this day the most common help desk ticket, really. For those of you that have used the application probing feature, which was sort of designed to schedule and report on automated application launches within your site, we now do the desktop probing as well, which is quite cool. And there's some new reports for adding more clarity around session reconnect events, so that you can distinguish between a user-initiated reconnect versus those that were caused by a network problem or an outage within your environment, allowing, along with historic reporting, to help admins track down those reconnect trends. And as always, they've continued to evolve the HDX Insights performance metrics. So in Citrix Cloud, you now get a year's worth of historic activity. So speaking of performance, as Citrix evolves its analytics capabilities, you'll see a number of enhancements coming out that will really help admins stay on top of everything going on within their environment. So I think this is an interesting talking point, and I've seen it from a monitoring company called ControlUp. Some of you might have heard of them or might use them. But if you subscribe to the cloud service, you will get some analytics about performance. Now, what it means is how long does it take to open an application, how quick you log on, a few other bits that you might be able to see on screen and stuff like that. And it's really cool. But I've had many conversations with Heath about this, saying, how relevant is it if I'm only monitoring my own environment? I'm not too sure how great it is to know that our logons are 20 seconds or whatever it may be, or it takes me 3 seconds for Microsoft Word to launch. I don't know if that's good if I don't compare it to other people's, which is why it's always worth getting involved in community-based activities. But I think Citrix Cloud are missing a trick potentially by this being relevant to you as a consumer of Citrix Cloud as opposed to all Citrix Cloud customers. If I could show you an average of every Citrix Cloud customer that said Microsoft Word launched in 1 second, you'd be very quickly concerned that yours takes 3 seconds or whatever it takes, and you'd strive to be better at it, right? So I think they are missing a trick about it not being across the Citrix Cloud platform as a whole, but performance analytics is a big thing, and scoring your users from a performance point of view will only make your infrastructure administrators get that competitive nature out of them and work out why they've got some red bits on the graphs rather than green bits. So pretty cool stuff. It's in public preview, but the Citrix brand personalization service is simply that. It allows you to we're not talking about changing logos on storefront and stuff like that. It's more than just that replacement of a workspace app icon. This service will allow you the personalization of the user interface theme, the icon, the application name, and it provides references to the application name in warnings and pop-up messages as well. So that is quite a good one. I quite like that. Again, those of you that have been working with us for a while hopefully know how much we promote Workspace Environment Manager. It is available as a cloud service, and long may it continue, really. I don't think there's much more to say on that. And of course, they're always making changes to the Workspace app, which, again, the art is formerly known as Citrix Receiver, but the Workspace app is driving parity across platforms whilst striving to keep the user experience consistent for each platform. So lots of new features announced there. Right, there's not much left, guys. Hang in there. So security. Security is a key tenet for all products at Citrix, including virtual apps and desktops. And security is simply not black and white solution of access denied and access granted. but it's something that needs to adjust based on the breadth of user access with information regarding their device, their network, their task, their location. So I wanted to kick off the security section with the secure digital perimeter slide that we had on earlier. And it's really Citrix's vision for digital workspaces which require a trusted, user-centric, people-centric security framework. So hopefully you'll find a lot of relatable components in the chart, and some of the key highlights for me are the bring your own identity. So people like Ping and Okta, Google, or any of the other providers. With contextual access, the security apparatus is aware of where on which device a user is accessing the workspace services, which allows the security framework to adjust and implement the location device-based rules. And another important aspect is the disappearing notion of the ever-present on-premise DMZ. So with the cloud sprawl, your data is not contained to your data centers, but it might exist on a server across different parts of the globe, which might lead to various security conversations around where is my data. Citrix Security and Performance Analytics brings that security back without constraining the business users. So the security analytics is listening to indicators like which user, from where, which device, what's the network activity, to trigger automated actions to be initiated based on the threat definitions configured by administrators. And the overall goal of the secure digital perimeter is to ensure that an IT organization is able to provide the flexibility without compromising the security. Strong message from Citrix again. Again, Citrix ever present and committed to making technology accessible to everyone. So the last LTSR release was tested for conformance with Rehabilitation Acts, FIPS compliancy, common criteria, and engineering teams are also actively engaged in getting SOC 2 or SOC 2 and FedRAMP certified in the upcoming quarters. Session watermarking. So I think this was initially released in like 7.17, but it's actually gotten better and better and a little bit more flexible with the way you can implement it across all services now. So in today's world where anything and everything can be captured on a mobile device, organizations need to not only protect their sensitive data, but also prevent the theft of that data. And session watermarking offers solutions to accurately identify the exact source for the data. So you can get quite customizable with it. You can have a username put on there, an IP address, a date, a host name maybe. And again, I know Heath and I were talking about recent examples of this where it's made it sort of like the public news of, was it Jaguar Land Rover that? Yeah,
the Defender got leaked from an internal presentation. So again, if you can watermark the presentation, if it's that level of confidentiality, that's obviously going to be a benefit. For my sins, I used to work in recruitment. So again, where candidate information and data is so important, some more unscrupulous recruitment consultants, I'm sure you're shocked that there are those out there, we're taking screen grabs of candidate data from them on their mobile phone. So again, this helps in terms of mitigating the risk of those events happening. So again, a great use case that they're implementing here.
And it is really, I know people have sort of scoffed at the fact that Citrix have possibly presented themselves as a security vendor, but it's an example of what they sort of refer to from a security point of view as well. So session watermarking available for workspace experience and so Citrix Cloud and on-prem ultimately. And coming soon to Citrix Workspace is application protection policies. So app protection policies protect enterprises against compromised user devices that might have things like keyloggers or screen scraping malwares installed. So that user that brings their own laptop in, it's just riddled with viruses that you had no idea about. Or with app protection policies, Windows and Linux applications and desktops, all of those sessions, along with SaaS applications, will be protected from the authentication screen onwards from those keyloggers and screen scrapers. So the protection will work for virtual apps and desktops, for Citrix files, and it is driven through the policies in Citrix Studio and Citrix Access Control, so easy to manage as well. I actually saw this in action where they opened up a Notepad document, started typing some jargon into it. Sorry, no, that's the wrong way around. Opened up Notepad, started typing some real stuff into it, and then looking at what the keylogger was actually capturing was jargon. So it works pretty cool. Quite like the idea of that one. Delegated, sorry, not delegated, secure browser service. So the secure browser service, again, gets lots of improvements. It's not necessarily too widely adopted, but ultimately having a sort of Chromium-based web browser to deliver access to your SaaS applications that you control, putting your your files around it, your rules around it, it makes it quite a good turnkey cloud service, and still exists to this day, still gets lots of promotion. Delegated admin and configuration logging in Citrix Cloud. So we can see the who, what, and when of what people have been doing in the Citrix Cloud environment. And workspace experience with two-factor authentication. So there's been lots of interest from customers that are wanting to adopt the workspace experience, but one of the blockers was the lack of two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Now Citrix are offering a simple two-factor authentication inside of the workspace experience using time-based one-time password generated for the user on their registered device. So if 2FA is enabled inside the workspace experience, it will be enforced for all users on all access points, and you can use apps like Google Authenticator, Symantec VIP, Citrix have got their own SSO one as well, but basically any sort of time-based one-time pass provider. And workspace identity integration with Citrix Gateway. So again, this is just talking about your federated credentials. So being able to, again, you want to enter one username and password, and you want it to pass through to all of your services. Federated identity providers include Ping, Okta, and Google as well. And that's the lot.
Well done.
Go on.
I mean, we've failed in a way, haven't we?
We have. I mean, we have.
We've completely failed in terms of keeping to time, but I hope you appreciate it, and thank you. I can see that there's still lots of people on the line. Is that there were a considerable number of important things we wanted to get out, and we wanted to go through with you today. So I was going to schedule the Q&A. If you've got some questions, please do send them in. We won't necessarily go through them now because I'm conscious of time, and we've all got to get back to seeing how the cricket's going. But no, please do send those questions through. And also, as a term of a next step, what I'd like to do is offer an invitation for people on the webinar and this broadcast today is to come up here to Access House, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running a Citrix best practice workshop. So this is an interactive session. So whereas today it's just been us relaying lots of updates and information, this is where you can actually feedback and say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve with our IT. This is what the organization needs to improve to make itself more effective. And then we can use the skills that, the considerable skills that Ashely has, and also our other Citrix consultants to help guide you on a roadmap going forwards. So it'll be, believe it or not, even more in depth, but completely specific to your needs. The session is going to be led by Ashely, and really all you have to do is if you want to book your place, we'll relay and come up with dates and times. If you're interested, either drop me an email or use the control panel again to let me know that you're interested in this. We are going to be limited to 8 people because we find that 8 is about the most optimum number. Any more than that, we don't really get into the nitty-gritty of how it's going to benefit. So yeah, we are limited just to 8 people. So please do take us up on that offer if it's of interest. Ashely, thank you very, very much. I think we should let these good people go. We will send around the slide deck. We will answer all the questions. So we'll leave the webinar running, say for longer, so you've got a chance to put in your questions. Thank you very much for attending. I really do hope that you got some interest and you found the presentation useful. And until next time, thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.